शुरू करें? Friends, it's a great pleasure to welcome you all to today's book discussion. It's a very special event, a very special occasion for all of us. We're all honored with the presence of official formal title Lieutenant Bharati Asha Sahai Chaudhary. So today we are discussing her book, The War Diary of Asha San. Asha San, you know, his son is a honorific in the Japanese. And the book is titled From Tokyo to Netaji's Indian National Army. So I'd like to welcome you, ma'am, today. I'd like to welcome you today to the Vivekananda International Foundation. You were a part of the legendary Rani of Jhansi Regiment of the Indian National Army, set up by Netaji Subhash Bose, one of the tallest leaders of India, great leader of the freedom struggle, and I think someone who continues to inspire all of us even today. And we are very grateful that despite your advanced age, you came here today and interact with youngsters. Everybody is young here. So we look forward to hearing from you and your words. The war diary she kept as almost as a child. She was a young child lady at that point of time. She kept it during 1943 to 47. And from what I read in the book, she was a compulsive diary writer. Every morning she had to, every day she had to record something or other. Even things like what sabzi has been made, what are the birds who are coming, the trees, the flowers, and so on. So I think that's a great record that she kept. But this is a very valuable account of that unforgettable episode of the freedom struggle, India's freedom struggle, as seen through the eyes of young Lieutenant Bharati. It's very interesting that she was motivated by the burning desire to serve her country, which she had never seen. She had never seen. She was born in Japan. She had never been to India. And yet, that was, I think, the influence of her father, who was a close associate of Netaji. And I think meeting Netaji in Tokyo in 1943 probably also had that impact. And that also gives us an idea of how people were feeling, those who were living abroad at that point of time. How the goings on in India, the Second World War, all these were impacting the people who were living outside. And I think that's the great contribution that the diary makes. She joined the INA after meeting Netaji in Tokyo in 1943. And the diary is not only a source of information, but also an inspiration for the young generation. I'm sure many of you are here. You should read this and get inspired. And inspiration is so very important. The diary also gives us glimpses of several key moments in that great episode. The arrival of Netaji at Tokyo, and the first meeting, that's a very moving account there. And the impact that the Battle of Imphal had on these people who were fighting, and how they kept their morale, and how they felt that the hope should not be lost, because if you lose the hope, you lose the future. And then there is also a very moving account of the Netaji's ashes were brought to Tokyo after the crash. I think that's also a brief but a moving account. And also glimpses into the life in Japan after the surrender. That's also very important. Her mother, she had to survive, and how she set up a small shop there, and how used her own, saris and many other things, and try to help. And I think there's a very interesting account of the servant that she kept, and how that she was a Japanese, and how she did not allow her husband to enter the house because he had lost the war. And that account of so many young people committing harakiri and the mood in Japan. I think that in a few words that comes out beautifully in the diary. I would like to welcome Sanjay Chaudhary ji, who is looking after the mother. Thank you for bringing her here. And Tanvi Srivastav, who is the translator, and she has translated the diary from the original Hindi account that was serialized in Dharamyog. And some of you would remember that great magazine that used to be published in the 60s and 70s. So this translation is from there, translated into English now. So you've done a great job, Tanvi, in translating the diary, and I think there's great sensitivity with which you have translated. And I also want to welcome other friends and family members of Asha ji who have joined us today. Now we have three very important, distinguished panelists today who have read the book and who will briefly comment, offer their comments on this book. Shri Raghavendra Singh ji, who is a senior fellow with the VIF, a historian in his own domain, and he's written several books. He's the distinguished fellow with the VIF, senior fellow with the VIF. Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, retired distinguished fellow with the VIF. He's a great knowledge about matters military. And Professor Sujit Datta, distinguished fellow with the VIF and editor of our quarterly journal, National Security. So I'll not take more of your time. Maybe we could, begin with a small video which has some photographs. So let's start at that.
उड़ा के
So that was a very moving video. So now I request Sanjay ji to say a few words.
I don't need it.
Okay.
I need it.
Okay. I'll be speaking.
No, I can.
I have. I'll ask you to speak. First of all, I must apologize because not only she had a bad leg, but age-related hearing problems are there. Normally, if you're speaking to her, and if you're speaking in Japanese, it's even better. Then she understands everything. But that is, uh, but it's very difficult to talk about your own mother. But since I have, heard these stories as a,
Give me
as
that. I do.
yeah. So I have heard these stories, but to understand where she is coming from and why was a person born in Japan and then growing up in the pre-war years when Japan was a very well-to-do country and the only country, in fact, which was never colonized by the West. And so why she grew up in that atmosphere and then she went and joined the Rani Jhansi regiment. What led her to that? So I need to give a little bit of background because this video shows this person, a tall person who is standing next to her, which is her father, whose name is Anand Mohan Sahai. And very briefly, I will say that he was from a village near Bhagalpur, um, as he describes it, a dusty backwaters of Bihar. But he came in contact with a lot of activists, people from the Anushilin Samaj and all that. And the awareness of freedom and being a colony of a foreign power was already implanted. And he decided that, okay, I'll serve people while doing medicine. Went to the temple, at that time temple, now Patna Medical College, took admission there. But when Jallianwala Bagh happened, they were all very, very shaken. And that's the time when Gandhiji and Rajendra Babu came to Patna and gave the call for youngsters to come and join the movement. And he, much to the unhappiness of his parents, he gave up his medical studies, joined the movement, joined the non-cooperation movement, and and was fully in it. For a period of time, I mean, he spent time in the ashram, became a true Gandhian in that sense, and became the private secretary of Rajendra Babu. But then all of a sudden, Chari Chora happened, and Gandhiji withdrew the agitation of the movement. This left all the youngsters very, very frustrated, and that because they had no leadership, everyone was in jail, they didn't know what to do. So some of his seniors said that, look, you might as well finish your medical studies. So he wanted to go to the US, America to do his study, but for various reasons, the British didn't want him to go anywhere. Not to US at least, so they denied him the visa. But he managed to go to Japan. Like I said, Japan was the only country which was not within colonial rule. So he reached there. He stayed in Kobe. In a little flashback, because 1922, when the Gaya Congress happened, then he met. I mean, there was this very fortuitous meeting. My Anand Sahai's meeting. One, he met Sati Sahai, Sati at that time, sorry, Sati Sen, and who was the niece of Deshbandhu Chatiranjan Das in Calcutta, and her and Urmila Devi, who was the sister of Deshbandhu. She was her mother. She was at the Gaya Congress, and she was singing along with Deshbandhu and other people. And that's when her father met her, and then they kept meeting in Calcutta because of the Congress work in Patna. Uh, the other person who was there and who was working for the Gaya Congress was this very young congressman uh, who had resigned from the ICS and who joined the Congress, Subhash Chandra Bose. So they worked together, and both with similar passions, similar dreams. They kept in touch. But 1923, like I said, he went to Japan, started working there. He was in touch with Rashbihari Bose. They kind of decided that, look, we need to awaken the Indian communities in all these Asian countries and tell them what is happening in India. This agitation, this for freedom is going on. The Congress also needed funds. He was told by Mahatma Gandhi and Rajendra Babu that, look, collect as much money because we need the money. So he was doing that. To make his travels easier, he was posing as a Indian businessman, a trader. He was a total disaster. He ran the country into the company into the ground, but it was a good enough reason. He came back to India, for consultations with the seniors, and he found Sati, who was then in Chandiniketa, still waiting, and he was very happy. And they got married with the blessings of Deshbandhu, with Deshbandhu, of course, but Gurudev, Rabindranath Tagore, and some of these seniors. They briefly met because Sati, my grandmother's family, and Subhash Bose's family were close. They were both in their agitation and all that. So they went. So they got married, went to Kobe and started a life. And a year later, Asha's son was born, and then her sister, and then two sisters followed her, and a younger brother. So, but her father believed that no English schools for them. They will go to the country that they have adopted. They went to the regular Japanese school. When his work became a little required more political interactions and all that, so they moved to Tokyo. She moved to the Sowa Women's University, and was in her second year in 1943 when her mother said that, look, Subhash Das, she used to call him, he's coming, we must go and meet him. So they went and met him. And she, in the meantime, she was in the thick of, because initially the fervor amongst the Japanese, the love for their country and the patriotism was very, very strong. When the war started, and the atmosphere at home was also a similar one. So when the war started, they said, okay, this is, Anand Sahai is quoted in various places in media, that this is our chance. So a lot of people, he questioned himself also, that being a Gandhian, can I do this? And but I think he very soon realized that there's no other way. So I can go back to being a peaceful Gandhian after I get independence. A very pragmatic approach, I'd say, and probably required at that time. And that's the way Subhash Bose also was thinking. So when Subhash Bose came, she took the opportunity, because her mother took her there. of telling him, "Yeah, I want to fight." She was 15. "I want to fight with you." He says, "You're too young. Hang on." So he was already building the Rani Jhansi regiment. When she was just about to turn 17, her father took her. She was put in the training camp. Then, of course, she learned. It was a very, very emergency training. She learned all the this thing, and then she entered the war. And then, of course, after that, they went up to nearly up to Burma, to Rangoon, or till the Irrawaddy. And then they had to come back because the retreat happened. They had to come back, and then she was put in prison with along the other people. All the other Rani Jhansi girls, they were mostly from around various countries, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand. They could go back to their homes. Her mother was in Tokyo. Her father was in uh, jail, initially in Vietnam, later in jail. So, fortunately, Netaji put her as a ward of Pandit Raghunath Sharma, who was the head of the Indian Independence League in Thailand. She's there for 9 months, learn how to wear a sari, make rotis, and learn Hindi. And then, of course, fortunately, then Anmol Sai and others were released from the prison in Singapore. Her uncle, Anmol Sai's younger brother, was also in the INA, and he was the director of intelligence. He was personally in charge of Netaji's security. Oh, there were n number of times when the British tried to assassinate him. But anyway, he was there, and ultimately he was also arrested, and he was also. So the three came back to India, and you saw that the welcome, that little pamphlet that was there. So that was done by some people in Calcutta. Of course, then they came back, and so this is in a nutshell of what happened to her. So I think that I think should give you an idea of what happened. Um, I think it'll be better. I think I'm speaking too much. So, so do you want to tell them about your experience of meeting Subhash Bose?
That's what. Yeah. We came to know, but my mother told that Subhash is coming because she knew Netaji from the childhood. But some relationship was there. So we thought that, oh, somebody from India, some great person is coming. That's what I knew that much. Then at night, it was all secret. So 12 o'clock at night, we went to Imperial Hotel or Japan, Teikoku Hotel. We went there. And Netaji was standing in their room. So in those days, Jai Hind was not started, but it was Vande Mataram. So we said, right. माँ ने कहा कि जाओ जाके पैर छू के प्रणाम करो. And Papa, Netaji was so angry. He said, हाँ, इतना 100 साल से हम लोग गुलामी सह के आए हैं, अभी भी पैर छूने को कर नहीं, खड़े होके जय हिंद बोल, वंदे मातरम. उस समय जय हिंद शुरू नहीं हुआ था, वंदे मातरम. तो हम लोग खड़े होके वंदे मातरम बोले. Then we sang. He was, and Netaji said, अंग्रेज से लड़ोगे? I said, of course, I want to. So, okay, I'm going to Bangkok, and your father will come and take you to Singapore, and then you can join Rani of Jhansi Regiment. Yeah,
Netaji
our Netaji.
to look at.
Oh, we never thought of seeing Netaji how he looked for her. That much I knew that he he's in those days he was not we were not thinking about him as a leader. I thought he said Ma's cousin brother. So I said she's he that was the only one he spoke in Bengali. Uh, uh, লড়তে পারবে? Can you fight the Angrez? I said, we were I was very angry. तुनक गई तुनक गए बोले कि हाँ जरूर लड़ेंगे जरूर अंग्रेज को मारेंगे. I said, okay. Then we said, I met him at take up hotel. Then, then she said, he told my mother that she, in Bengali, such a roga posta mane me. Do you think she can fight? I said, so my mother said, you don't know her. She is very strong at heart, very strong. So you can, I send her to a fighter. And then it was this was the first time I met Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose.
And second time? Second time?
And second time was in Bangkok. So at that time, Japan was not it was the war situation was very bad, and any time Japan would surrender like that, and so INA, Azad Hind Fauj, we and Azad Hind government also was prepared for the last thing to happen. Then I went there. Netaji was sitting there. So you have come to fight. I said, of course, I came to fight. Oh, okay, can you fight the Britishers? I said, why not? Of course. Okay. And he told Major Hassan, the private secretary, इसको admit करो रानी झांसी regiment में admit करो. So I went with him and I stayed in the camp, Rani Jhansi Regiment camp, and nothing, how to shoot, how to banduk leke kaise jana hai, all these things I learned. But it was very easy. I mean, I saw other girls learning how to do left, right, and all. So these things, and we started when childhood in school, we always had the physical training and all this. So it was very easy thing. And then I was in the Rani Jhansi Regiment camp, and then fighting, fighting spirit was full. And we were waiting when to go to Burma. And one day I decided that we are going to Burma, Rangoon, to march on. We had thought, so we are all ready with my small belonging, just a bed sheet, a small clothes, some small, and nothing, and uniform. But so, and it started. Then we were so unhappy that war was over, but Japan surrendered, and we couldn't imagine that Japan can surrender. I mean, we couldn't imagine. that how can Japan surrender? Uh, First time I thought it is a lie, just you know, idhar udhar ki baat hai. Then first we knew that, and we were put into jail. We were in jail, and in jail we were happy like we were in Bangkok at that time, and all the Indian uh, ladies, women, and girls used to come and meet me, and other people also. And they used to bring something to eat, chocolates and all, and we were very happy that time. And after some time, we all were sent to Calcutta, still prisoner, and there also, and Nehruji told Mountbatten that you people, no, you have to release these girls. They should go back home. Okay. He said, so Mountbatten said, no, the girls are fighting against Britishers. So how can I release them? So Netaji said, it is, it is okay. If you don't release them, then all the English, uh, English in India, in Calcutta or Madras or they all will be punished. They will be put into jail, and then maybe they have to be killed or something like that. And they were very people. The man, he was the very a bit scared, and then we were all really.
Maybe someone wants to ask some
क्या?
questions. लोग कुछ पूछना चाहते हैं.
हाँ,
हाँ.
हाँ, हाँ. Yeah, now please ask whatever you people like to ask.
So we'll just go through a few
Yes, yes.
comments, etc.
Huh?
Okay, thank you. I think that's the first-hand account.
Yeah.
It means a lot. So
जोर से बोलो.
एक discussion होगा किताब पे.
हाँ?
Book, there will be a discussion. After that.
after that, we'll have some.
We'll have-
So I request Tanvi, who's translated the book, whether she'd like to say a few words here.
Thank you so much. I'd like to just focus on the translation part of the book since we've heard from Asha San herself. This is really a story that transcends both time and language. She wrote this book 75 years ago in any scraps of paper she found. It was a diary, it was raw, it was all over the place, and she wrote it in Japanese. It's quite marvelous for me as a translator to see that the Hindi version, which was first published in Dharmyog in 1973, retains that Japanese element to it. If you look at the nuances of the words, the focus on the seasons, the very short sentences, the structure, you could tell that this book was not written originally in Hindi. You could sense that Japan, the culture, everything is there in the book. And you can see that when she moves away from Japan, the language also changes slightly. So it was a very, very interesting project for me. And every step of the way, it felt like I was learning new information. My father-in-law, Sanjay, he presented me with a copy of the book, which he republished in 2011. And just through conversations, I found out that, okay, there's an older version. I didn't know that Dharmyog had come out, so then I had to go like figure out, oh my god, in 1973 there was a Dharmyog version that came out. How can I get a copy of it? I reached out to lots of people. I reached out to a collector in Ahmedabad who's been collecting Dharmyog from the 60s onwards. So he actually had all the copies of Dharmyog. So he sent me scanned photos. So it was wonderful for me to go through different iterations of the same book to see, is the information changing? Is anything new been added on? Dadi also tried to do an English translation herself. So I found that in her papers. And it was really interesting because with her, while she was translating, her memory would permit her to add any new information that she remembered. So it was putting together a puzzle pretty much. And I'd like to just read an excerpt from the book and just talk about how interesting it was for me from a translation perspective. So this excerpt is from February 1945. Japan is not doing too well in the war. There's severe shortage of food and supplies. And whatever food there is, Japan is sending to its soldiers on the front. So the people in the mainland are having a very hard time. Dadi is 17, and you can hear that 17-year-old, you can hear that voice in this. Winter, but this is Tokyo. Spring is a while away. A white blanket of snow covers the earth, and it feels as though the sky will burst into tears at any moment. Here and there, evergreen trees show the tips of their fingers. It is cold. We know dawn will rise tomorrow, but today, if conditions stay the same, we will freeze to our bones. There's no strength left in the gas stove. We make tea for Ma with whatever remains, without milk. Hunger gnaws at us, but there's nothing to eat. Ma bartered a cotton sheet for rice some days ago in the village of Kokubunji, but there's only a handful of it left now. When Ashok doesn't care about his hunger, how can I say I'm starving? When baby sings, how can I cry? When nothing worries Ma, then how can I, her eldest daughter, no, her eldest, make a face? Ashok is only 8. On our way to college, there is an attack, and we rush into a trench. Looking up, we see a throng of American B-29 bombers hovering over us. We call them mosquitoes because they make a buzzing sound on approach and are smacked down to the ground like pests. Here they come, swarm after swarm, their propellers slicing the thin air. 2 mosquitoes and 1 Japanese airplane are on fire. They glide smoothly towards the ground, one after the other. The Japanese pilot, sun glinting against his green wings, waves his handkerchief, bidding farewell to the world. Taking leave from the red sky and the white earth, he becomes a martyr. In his mind, he has probably made a vow to be reborn in his holy motherland, Nippon. How brave is he? I wish I could attain a similar death. After college, I visit the ration office. I have a permit which allots us 500 grams of Burma rice. Ishikawa-san says they have received 5 kilograms of rice for 10 households, meaning 500 grams per house. At least we get to see rice after a month. As soon as I return home, the sirens begin to howl. Bo, bo, bo. The enemy pilots have reached the periphery of Tokyo. In a few minutes, carpet bombing will begin. Snatching the bag of priceless rice along with a first aid kit and a helmet fitted with cotton, I rush to the trenches with Tulu. The mosquitoes arrive soon after, dual sirens screeching around us. Bombing begins almost immediately. The air heaves and the earth shudders. From the ground, the Japanese try their best to retaliate with their anti-aircraft guns. Japanese fighter planes roar upwards and the calm evening sky bleeds rust. Intense fighting breaks out. Tulu and I quietly exit the trench. It's difficult not to be curious despite Ma's instructions. She has forbidden us from coming out of the trenches. The spectacle is truly entertaining. Imagine thousands of needles piercing the sky, a tapestry, a theater like no other. Cinder and fire, flaring planes, both American and Japanese, engaged in a duel to death. Watching the scene unfold, we too wish to hoist ourselves on the burning cinders and cry with joy. The skies eventually become calm, and as the earth smolders, we return to our home. The government has forbidden us from lighting a candle or producing any sort of light. Only a traitor would light a flame or a cigarette at this moment. Holding Ma's shoulders, we bring her into the room and gather around her. Soon the radio informs us that the enemy has left Japanese territory. Ma's shadowy figure places something in our hands. I cry out, Ma, where did you find this bread? First, you all eat. Ma, where's yours? Ashok asks. He worries about Ma first, his hunger last. We break our bread into smaller pieces and feed her. After finishing our princely meal in darkness, we wash ourselves and slip under our blankets. Tonight, unlike other nights, Ma is not talkative, nor does she gently scold us. Who knows what suddenly happens to her, so joyful and busy, and then unexpectedly a stony silence that petrifies us. She sings, sometimes in Bengali, sometimes songs of prayer, sometimes a Rabindra Sangit, and abruptly during a verse, Her voice breaks and she collapses into tears. We're too scared to ask her the reason. So this excerpt is very interesting. A lot of people ask me how long it took me to translate the book. So the literal translation only took about 2 months, but there's just so much more to it than the word-to-word translation. This piece is in the Hindi diaries right at the very beginning, so you assume that it's 1943. But there were no American B-29 bombers in 1943. They only appeared in August 1944 when Americans had won enough air bases close enough to attack mainland Japan. And then there was Ashok's age, the fact that it was snowing. So then you're like, it can't be August, September, October. It snows in Tokyo only January, February, March. Then I found that in March, some of the worst air raids happened over Tokyo. And this doesn't sound like a description of an air raid where 100,000 people died. So I had to sort of calculate that, yes, this sounds like it was February 1945 and not later, not before. Um, and then what's also very interesting is that as soon as you hear the voice, you can hear that it's the teenager speaking. It's not an adult. It's someone who's willing to go against what her mother has said, willing to step out to see something like a gunfight happening. Then luckily for me, Asha-san was in Bangalore with us at that time. So if I was confused anywhere, and there were lots of places where I was confused because from Japanese to Hindi, certain things were lost, certain typos were there. The word, for example, the association, the neighborhood association in Japanese is Tonaragumi. In Hindi, it was spelled something else, and it made absolutely no sense. So I could just show Dadi, and she would say that, "Oh, I meant this." Um, so it's been very interesting, and I think for me, one thing that has really struck me is that though this is Asha San's story, it's so many other people's stories as well. For me, the one voice that really I connected with was her mother, Sati, and the sacrifices she made throughout. And it's nobody's really heard about these sacrifices. So with each INA soldier, with each family who belong to the Azad Hind government, there's so many stories that we are still yet to hear. And I'm actually working on another book on Anand Mohan Sahai and on Sati Sahai. And I'm going through the National Archives, and as you dig through the INA files, you are finding like one story after the other. There's hundreds of movies to be made, hundreds of books to be written, and I hope all these stories come out soon. Thank you.
So thank you for that perspective, the translator, but it is also related. So this is additional pointers to that. So okay, now we go to our discussants, and I think Raghavendra Singh has to leave, so I request him first to.
I've decided not to leave.
Okay. Anyway.
So it's one of those feelings which is very rare, actually. So the analogy which I would like to actually draw may sound quite bizarre, but sitting in the presence of Asha San and trying to somehow reach out to the people who made the INA and the person who headed the INA, second INA. I'm also reminded, being a student of history, that how must be people feeling in 1920s when they perhaps met some person who was connected with 1857, right? So I'm actually getting that kind of a feeling right. We are in the presence of a person whose mother had come to Calcutta. Sati Sen had come to Calcutta, had met Subhash Bose, and it was thereafter that Subhash Bose made the plan of actually slipping out from his house. So this crucial and critical accident of history, can you imagine that Asha San's mother was was intricately linked with it. I didn't know of that till I read this book. I didn't know of that. Secondly, her father was sent by Subhash Bose to go and meet Ho Chi Minh in Saigon City. And he became friends with him. He wanted Subhash ji to meet him. Again, history didn't allow that. Her uncle Satyadev Sahai was involved in so many operations, covert operations, and must have been very crucial to INA's functioning, of which we do not know. Now, when I say that, I'm also reminded of this tragedy which has overtaken two very crucial periods of our history. One, of course, is the time when INA was formed, INA 2, and during the Subhash Bose's period. The other one was 1857. I can perhaps condone that 90 years after 1857, which we spent as colonials to the Brits, perhaps we were not allowed and it was treasonous for us not to write that history. But I cannot condone this fact that after 1 or 2 years, and something which directly led to our independence, we have really ignored INA. These 75 years, do you know of a gentleman called Yelappa? You may know, but most of us didn't know. Yeah. Similarly, Iyer Sahab, similarly, Mr. Menon, all these people, there's so many who gave up their lives. I mean, the thousands of people who got martyred, while we were retreating from Imphal, and no one hears of them. I mean, any nation should be proud of a history, where the stories of brave hearts, I mean, they would lap it up and we have it in thousands and we just don't care about it. In 75 years, it's deliberate. I mean, I have actually for you a oral history transliteration of Madame M.L. Schinkel, Mrs. Subhash Bose. Now, when I read this story, I was aghast that a person, Mr. Nanda, who was a very famous historian of Nehru Memorial, this was 1970, he gets an opportunity to speak to her. And what he does? He asks all kinds of nonsensical questions to this lady. Basically, the whole idea was deliberately not to record anything about Subhash. It's so clear when you read this. Similarly, I want to read out something which Colonel Prem Kumar Sehgal has written. I'm so fortunate that the family of Asha San is also here, and I'm sorry I'm digressing, but the word which she used, tunak. Tunak is very Bihari, actually, and I'm from Bihar, so sort of it immediately sort of connected. जिसको कहते हैं कि हम तो तुनक गए, तो तुनक गए. When I saw her right now, of course, I saw her on 125th anniversary in Victoria Memorial. But then, because there was just so many of us that one didn't really have the opportunity to meet you, ma'am, in such a intimate surrounding, and I'm really grateful that this has been accorded due to our director and his So, so this is an excerpt again from an oral history uh, of Colonel Sehgal, and the question being asked by one Manchanda is that did Bhulabhai Desai talk to you? Now, Bhulabhai Desai, in one of his most brilliant performances, had defended the INA, we all know, during the trials, not so much as Nehru, who I don't think had ever fought a case. So, so he says yes. Colonel Sehgal says yes. Bhulabhai and I had lots of talks. In fact, but for him, I would have probably gone into politics again. He was the one man who disillusioned me because the way he had been treated by Gandhiji and Congress. I therefore decided that I would have nothing to do with politics. Manchanda ji, what did he actually say? Could you repeat? Colonel Sehgal, yes, I remember one day he was not very well. He had to be taken up in an invalid chair, and I was walking along with him. It was just before the elections to the Central Assembly. This was in 1946. Bhulabhai showed me a postcard which he had received from Gandhiji saying, you should not seek election. You should devote all your time to the INA defense. Bhulabhai told me, does the old man think that I am an idiot? After all, I have been the leader of the opposition in the assembly for the past so many years. And now when things are really going to happen, they want me to deny me that position. They even do not want me in the assembly, and he gives me a stupid excuse like this. And then I also saw how Bhulabhai was treated by other congressmen when he was in the bad books of Gandhiji. The Congress Working Committee was meeting in Bombay in the same house, Bhulabhai's house. And they did not even have the courage to go and see the ailing Bhulabhai in his room. I was there and Bhulabhai told me, Prem, you never fall in the hands and clutches of these people. They will squeeze you dry and throw you away. I was with him when he died. In fact, after Bhulabhai died, I went to Madras when I addressed a public meeting and repeated his advice given to me in the public meeting. Sardar Patel sent for me. He was very angry that I should have made such a statement. I told him that I had only repeated what a dear friend had said to me when he was dying. Now, why do I say this? I say this because because Subhash Bose, as a revolutionary, was absolutely clear that if we had to attain independence for ourselves, it may not be during our lifetime. No congressman was entitled to think that freedom would come in his or her lifetime. But what did we see? We saw that the Congress people wanted to achieve freedom in their lifetime. And if you want to achieve freedom in your lifetime, then you have to actually compromise. And that's what happened. And the bitterest of the pills they willingly swallowed was that of partition. One of the persons, Captain Lakshmi Sehgal, is on record actually saying that I'm sure by whatever Netaji spoke to her, she was absolutely sure that he would have never agreed to the partition. And I'm sure Ma'am Asha Shan would also agree with me that he would have never agreed to partition. And the freedom which we got through transference, had we attained that by attaining it, by capturing the freedom, then that wouldn't have happened. So that is something which I wanted to say. Then, of course, there's hardly been any research on various personalities of INA. That is something which has been very, very late in coming, and it's not that we 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 have lack of records, as Tanvi herself is saying that there is just so much of it which is lying in the National Archives. They're trunkfuls actually, and I say this because I've seen it. So 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 there's just so much to talk about it. Let me just read one or two. Sorry, sir, but please let me just read from. Yeah. Just a second. The ashes of General Isoda, who was on the same plane and who died on the same day, were also placed there. His last rites were done simultaneously. When he next got a plane to Tokyo in this September, we brought Netaji's ashes with us. Now, I was telling Tanvi that there's this whole controversy of Netaji perhaps not dying, etc. But if his liaison officer, General Soda, also died with him, right? And he died, he vanished, right? So, I mean, why are we sort of creating this controversy again? I personally feel that the whole controversy has taken away the gravitas of the contribution which Subhash Bose made to our national movement. Because the first lesson which the British actually drew in 1857 was that without army, they were in proper shit. Let's and that's the feeling they got when they sent out people to check out not only within their own this thing but outside of the country also. They got to know that the usual recruit in the Indian army wanted all of them, all these people, to be released. And Congress was actually quite dead after 1945 when the leaders all came out and things. And it was actually the INA which caught the imagination of the people, on which piggyback the whole Congress rode. And the best thing is that Renkoji temple's ashes, which eventually went to Renkoji, actually came to Asha San's house. And they were there for so many days. Netaji's, and I have had the privilege of actually going and paying homage to Subhash Bose's ashes in Renkoji temple long years back. So that's about it.
Well, fascinating. I think the excerpts that you read, very moving, I must say. So now I request General Sharma.
Thank you, sir. For me, it's a great honor to be today in presence of Lieutenant Bharti Asha Sahai Chaudhary. It's a pleasure. We've been hearing about her for such a long time. And thank you, Tanvi, for writing this book and for reading it. It has been, you must in your eyes number of times that you pierce through it. And I totally agree. Some of these songs that were made post-independence actually forced us to forget about INA. दे दी हमें आजादी बिना खड़क बिना ढाल. What about those thousands and thousands who got killed with khadaks and dhals, with malaria, with in swamps, fought in Imphal, where we seen the cemeteries which honor the British soldiers but not honor the INA. See the history has been largely convoluted in a manner that we tend to forget and miss out on the contributions of INA. Thank you, ma'am, for think you are as young as you and 17 years old today. So I have gone over the book and I found great pleasure in reading it. This is, I just take the word naturally. The translator takes on the cake on this one, but she says it's a metamorphosis of a clumsy teenager. And willing to be beheaded for the country, as a teenager. What great change. From a student on Showa College to a Vaishnav girl drowning in the tales of Mahabharata and Ramayana. A sister Bhenji, the word Bhenji being used for household chores and child care. And the book has many books. Why do you write a diary? I never wrote a diary. So I was fascinated. Why would somebody write a diary? Why waste time writing diary? So she explains why she writes a diary. And it's very interesting to say that the diary, I didn't write down. If I don't write down, my soul will not find peace. Is what she writes. It's the involvement into. I can only share things with only two people, my ma and my diary. That's the growth of the child. Today we say 17, 18 years, a child only. The child writing this way. Many books. This is not one book. There are many books. There are many threads that are woven into this one. Each one thread has got different meanings. I'm fascinated by the poeticness of many things. The poetic thought process, like she says that vivid descriptions of the flowering seasons and of the culinary delicacies of Bengali cuisines and Japanese and Chinese cuisine. But she says, yes, so you see, the twittering of birds. I do not know how did you take the word twittering from which language, how did translate. Twittering of birds awakens me today. It's a thrilling dawn, trembling with life. I can hear the sounds of birds enveloped into the balsamic blue scent that seduces everything. And then she says, in Tokyo, the flowers have no scent. One didn't know this. It's a good thing reading with in Tokyo. There's all beautiful flowers, but they are beautiful shades, but they have no scent. What depth into the meaning of this one? Nowadays we talk about women taking over command. Nowadays the TV every second day. That women regiments, women regiments so nahi bani abhi, but women are joining the armed forces and they're. But about women itself, there is book has got great enriched value as to how women were involved. It's not Rani Jhansi Regiment alone, but it's a thing, the courage of the women themselves as to how they fought, how they learned. I mean, I'm fascinated that we are taught Dhawa, Gopnikal, the Bennett on a rifle. We do this charge and all that. And she says that we charged and we made effigies of Churchill and Roosevelt. And that's what we were charging at. This is history. One didn't know about it. Actually, I know I'm fascinated to write on this part to the infantry school and tell them this is how, if you want to teach people, you make us something of Bajwa, General Bajwa of the Pakistan Army as a teaching value, sir. Imran Khan is a dead man, but nearly so. So it is such great things about women. I agree with. I am fascinated by the character of a mother, Sati. I think it's fascination altogether the way that lady suffered so much in life and gave so much to the children and to her husband and tears on her own time. So the Sati's character, how it's come up from the time she met Netaji and from the time she allowed a 17-year-old girl to go and join a regiment outside and to fight in jungles. And that time, of course, one didn't know 45 the war will finish. When she left Japan, that thought was not there. But she went out and did all that. 25 years old girl ko bhejne mein dar lagta hai. It's a thing, that kind of courage across there, and the relationship between her and the other girl, Tullu, I think it's called, younger sister, who was ferociously angry, being left out and not being allowed to do the same thing which she was being allowed. The character description, see, um, these are many things which are unstated, but we relate ourselves to our lives. And I thought it was fascinating. So we say women are joining the armed forces. I think I like the remark of which she's quoting Captain Janki Bai. She says that you need to become an officer. An officer's work is not simply giving orders. We all I mean, he orders me every day, even now. Even now. When he rings me up, I thought we order aane wala hai. But then, it's not that thing important. The next sentence is important. She says, an officer's work is not simply giving orders. The orders need to be given appropriately, and one must be obeyed at once. Officers whose orders are violated are unworthy. It's not saying that the people who are obeying orders are wrong. It's the officer who's passing an order and not ensuring his orders are followed is wrong. This is when we talk every day about implementation. This is the theory of implementation of orders. You can say grandiose schemes, but if the scheme doesn't get implemented, that scheme is of no value. So, this is Janki Bai's a statement which I thought was very relevant to us. Again, I'll quote it sometime. Maybe one of these boards around sir kisi mess mein laga denge, sir. And there is, of course, Netaji's birthday, and he was weighed in gold, and he didn't like it. I didn't know this. See, we have been reading Netaji from childhood, and we have been fascinated, especially the warring people are fascinated with Netaji's exploits. But look at, he was weighed in gold. He didn't like it, and he had made a suicide core by signing. People had signed their names in blood. New things. So much to learn there. I think the threads of patriotism which are brought into this, I wish they make a movie out of her. I wish it will be a great thing if it comes on celluloid and goes back to Burma and how Burma was tough. Burma is tough today, but Burma was tougher then. The people came across and how dejected they were when they had a retreat from Imphal. The pain and the anguish that the INA felt on having been defeated, having reached there, and having gone to Andamans, see cellular jail and all those things that being referred out there. So it's a great. And one get inquisitive about both these things. How people were taught patriotism by nationalist songs. I took the book the other day in a seminar. I was reading it, and there was an ambassador sitting next to me. Jan Prasad, Jan Prasad. So he said, "Yeah, kya kaun si kitab hai?" So I said, "Ek kitab hai to speak on this book." So he opened the book and he saw the poems, the poetry in the end, and he said, "I'm taking the book." And he started writing the book and the poetry. He copied. He said, "I had never seen this." Fascinated by the writings on the in this, and he was writing in Hindi. This is of course what we call it Roman English, but he wrote in Hindi, and he said, "Yeah, this is superb." So the poetry itself rejuvenates you, in the manner it has been said. I am. She said she did not fire any bullets. She did not slash any arteries of the enemy. And I feel a little anguish that she did not get the privilege of going across with the INA. But by the time she reached the INA, was nearly dead. So she feels the pain of not having been able to reach in time. Who knew 1945 will happen the way 1945 happened? But I'm suffice it to say that the anguish is there. But then again, I take on one word, one sentence she writes somewhere, is that the destination, the journey is more important than the destination, which is a very emotive, important thing. So I also like the humor, subtle humor, small humor. Two things. One is makki ki roti. So she said makki ki roti, she said makki ki roti. So she said, yeah, what kind of people they are? Vaishnavas, they are Panditji who are making, Panditji is making a makki ki roti. So, the kh was missing makki ki roti. And also she said that about Hindi. I'm fascinated. I was a lower Hindi myself. But she says, to be honest, anything including a bomb falling on my head will be easier than learning how to write Hindi. My God, it's so true. And it comes out from the heart. Yeah, Hindi. And of course, Hindi mein oo ki matra, e ki matra bhi samajh nahi aati. It is so tough. Yeah. Profound words, ma'am. You have honored us by giving us this book. I'll end by one sentence, and I think it should be given to the Prime Minister to tell in the next meeting in Central Asia. When he said, no, last time he said, this is not an era of war. So you said, ma'am, war is silence, war is a doubt, war is not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow. Very important words you said a century, 75 years, 80 years ago. This is so true today. Thank you, ma'am. We are honored.
Thank you, Sharma, for bringing in a new aspect or several new aspects or dimensions of the book, apart from the political that we just heard. So thank you very much. And now I request Professor Datta to.
Thank you very much. This, I mean, this is an extraordinary moment in a way, just like the book, which is extraordinary. Meeting you in public after this age is something momentous because it really is part of history that belongs to the 1920s and 30s and 40s that none of our generation has seen. Even as Raghavendra so well put, is a distant memory in our history books. Very little is discussed. And yet, I think the role of the INA and the Indian Independence League and this entire collection of people around it, the role played by the Indian community in Southeast Asia and East Asia is full of such great patriotism and love and sacrifice that this must be the most glorious chapter in the entire post-1857 history. There have been many ups in that period of 90 years from 1857 onwards, but I think there is nothing equivalent to what we see in the patriotism, the organization, the sacrifice, the contribution, the rallying of people around Subhash Chandra Bose and the Indian Independence League, the Azad Hind government, in the overall national struggle that was going on within the country. And it is, in a way, to avoid being stuck in that politics that Anand Mohan Sahai left and went to Japan. So it's really a poetic, in a way, and the presence of Rajbihari Bose in Japan and their role in that, in creating an alternative center from which the Indians could operate, and the fact that Japan began that war and ran through Southeast Asia, capturing and releasing the countries from French and British rule rapidly, is a remarkable history. It failed at the end of it because it was, I think, somewhere down the line, Germany and Japan could not have won that war because the forces arrayed against them were too large, too global, and too complicated. Too many. The resource factor itself was too large for that to survive. And with that, of course, the INA's movement also did not fully succeed. But yet it succeeded because at the end of the day, as the stories of the INA's movement, its reaching of Kohima, the rallying of the people, and the stories spread rapidly about Subhash Chandra Bose's death and their contribution of the Azad Hind government was so inspiring that I think 1945, 46, 47 period becomes one of immense patriotism within India. And the RIN revolt and the Bhulabhai Desai's role in the entire case that went on in Al-Qaeda, I think is not to be subtracted from the inspirational role that the INA played and the waves of stories and reports that were then coming in among the people. So in this sense, this story of INA and its recording and the archival work that awaits to be done will change the course of interpretation of Indian history significantly post 1947, post 1930s onwards, actually, significantly, because what the Congress did was essentially to marginalize entirely the armed struggle role in the Indian national movement entirely. And therefore, along with it went the role of Subhash Chandra Bose. It began in 1937-38 itself with the presidency of Subhash Chandra Bose in the Congress and Gandhi's opposition to it and the boycott by the other Gandhian followers within the Congress party of that presidency and made him virtually paralyzed. He could not really act with the working committee not collaborating with him. So he had no other recourse except to leave it and set up his own political party called the Forward Bloc. So in some ways or the other, and then it's critical, the story of how Anand Mohan Sahai played an instrumental role in bringing him, in telling him that please come to Japan. That's from which we can now organize the movement. And Sati Sen's visit at night to meet him in I think 39 or 40 arranged the mother, Subhash Chandra Bose's mother, waiting for her at midnight, knowing that the British agents were all following and watching everything, is a fascinatingly a detective story like of thing where the letters were exchanged, the arrangements with the Japanese to bring him over to Japan, the arrangement then to go through Afghanistan into Russia and then Germany, and from there taking the submarine route to avoid the British, catching that submarine, sinking it, is extraordinary, absolutely fascinating story of the Indian struggle for freedom. And finally, when he reaches the story, the diary, in fact, begins 2 days before Subhash Chandra Bose lands in Japan in that submarine. It's extraordinary. The rest of the diary, whether she might have written more before that, but it doesn't begin there. It just begins the day or 2 days before he lands. The day, in fact, they were going to go out of Tokyo that day. They're planning to go out on some, I think, for a picnic or a visit outside. And then in the railway station, she catches Subhash Bose lands in Japan in a submarine. The headline in the newspaper, and they immediately change their plans and come back. So, in a way, and I congratulate Tanvi as well, because she's written it with immense literary capacity and empathy, and it's a moving book. So. The 2-3 things that strike me besides some of the historical things, I think one part of it is this settlement. I think of this unnecessary debate on Subhash Bose, which has divided the Bose family in a way on 2 sides of the story as to whether he was alive or he was dead. In that story where Habibur Rahman brings back the ashes from Formosa, which is Taiwan today, and the story of the plane crash when they were trying to go to Japan. And the plan was essentially to go to Manchuria and from there to connect with the Russians, the Soviets, who had till that time neutral. I mean, they had not declared war on Japan. So the idea was that through the Soviet help, we could probably continue the war. Subhash Bose gave a major speech from Singapore once the news of Japan's surrender came and the atomic attack on Hiroshima and Nagasaki came. I mean, it was devastating for the INA, and yet his speech does not display any despondency. He says that there are many roads to India's independence. This one is closed, but others will open up. And he inspires the people. And he also asks them that now that the British are catching the INS soldiers, they better respect the rules of war and do not take revenge on and respect the rights of the prisoners. And I think that had a significant role because it was addressed to the Indian community as well. And on the Congress leadership to tell to Mountbatten that you better treat the prisoners properly and save many lives. Otherwise, the British would have been extremely. In fact, they killed many INA soldiers, etc. In fact, the INA lost from 60,000 forces altogether. They lost around 60%. She says, this book says, 60% of the troops were killed in this war, and particularly the Imphal War, which were unfortunately they were caught within the rains. They could not really fight properly. They were surrounded on the hills by the British, and yet the local people had immensely supported them as they moved through Kohima towards Imphal. So there's this grand narrative. The three aspects of it, which also needs to be, one is that the human side of it. And I think Sati Sen's role is an extraordinary role. She comes from an extraordinary family as well. Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das was at that time the tallest leader, Congress leader. He's a great nationalist and was an inspiration for all those who wanted to struggle for independence in Bengal at that time. And Subhash Chandra Bose, as soon as he passed the ICS, didn't want to join it finally, came to Calcutta and became his secretary. And there is this interesting thing, a relationship between Anand Mohan Sahai and Subhash Bose. They're not really of the same age, virtually, but also Anand Mohan Sahai around the same time is joining Rajendra Prasad as his secretary, while Subhash Chandra Bose is joining Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das as the secretary. And that's how they meet often. So there is this story of how this family it intimately linked through their families, particularly Sati Sen's family, side with the national movement, and then Anand Mohan Sahai's deeply patriotic, nationalistic feeling that drives him to leave medicine and join the movement, and how they meet together in Shantiniketan thereafter, and they finally marry, is a story, human story in itself, of great, like it reads like a novel, really, frankly speaking. It's a great story. But there is additionally the beautiful human relations between Tulu and Asha San, the two sisters, and Tulu's deep attachment to her sister, and her sadness that while Asha is selected by Subhash Chandra Bose to join the Rani Hansi regiment, she is not. So, and yet there is this additional information that you've given that Tulu went on to become such an attractive character later on. As a father, later on became, after independence, became High Commissioner in West Indies, thereafter in Mauritius and in Vietnam. And because Sati Sen by that time was suffering from arthritis, which he had caught during the war period in Japan because of the immense difficulties they faced with food, etc., and the cold in Japan. Arthritis had struck her very badly. So she could not really join the husband as a hostess. So Tulu played that role and finally married into a family, well-known family in Mauritius, and settled down there and played an important role. So there's this family history, family ties, and that part of the human, which is captured very well in this diary. In addition, of course, it is the course of the girl herself, her bravery, her singular commitment to serve the motherland, which she has not seen. She was born in Kobe in 1928 and was deeply inspired by her father and mother to become a nationalist. And as you said, Rakesh, that how the mother actually told Subhash Bose, Subhash, take her into your regiment. And into that, for the first time, she takes the children to meet Subhash Chandra Bose that night in the Imperial Hotel when he arrived in Japan from Germany. So there is this entire uh, memories attached to all this that makes this a significant book, I think, in the historiography of Indian national movement, and particularly that part which is the part of the INA, written by somebody who's Scotsman and who's alive today, to share her memories with us, and has been translated so well into English. I was also struck by the fact of the Americans, as she mentions, as they capture Bangkok and this area, stealing and looting Indian families. I mean, it's unthinkable. They were actually looting people, and particularly targeting Indian businessmen, Indian communities in Thailand, while they captured it from the Japanese. And the terrible tragedy that she describes of the atom bomb, which she didn't believe in the beginning that anybody could do it, wiping out Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And she believed that they would bomb also Tokyo. And what would happen to her family? Her mother was there in Tokyo. So there are any number of elements in it of great richness which can be evolved and give us directions in many ways. There are very important Habibur Rahman's version of how the accident happened, how they had to cremate him there in Formosa, in Taihoku, and then bring him, and they kept the ashes in their family for 18 days. The ashes were actually in the family before it was sent to the temple to be kept there. I just want to read because there are so many dimensions to it. There are two poems she has written, one written by her. It is 945. She is now 17 years old. So it is raining today. I have written a poem. Yogi, protecting your saffron spirit, we marched forward towards victory. Today, once more, a team of Chokotai will return to their mothers. This is the Japanese kamikazes who are returning. The earth rips open and subsumes us. Freedom has awakened. We will be unconquerable. What face will I show them? As I bloom, I'm caught by death and demons. Today I remain in the country of sunrises. Who knows if I will be here tomorrow in the country where coconuts fall into the waves of the sea. So that's connecting the Japanese victory and patriotism with her own patriotism and feelings. There's something else. She reads a poem just in Bangkok, 26 June 1945. We have seen the temple of the Emerald Buddha with her father, and the father tells her the history of how it was presented by Sri Lankan, I think, Sri Lankans, and it was High King, and that the temple, the Buddha was actually brought from Varanasi and given to the Sri Lankans, and then from there it was kept brought to Thailand. And the Emerald Buddha, of course, is a famous Buddhist statue even now, and tells some the whole story of Ramayana, etc., goes along with it, and which are all lined there. And she then sings a song for her father, written by Madhav Shukla, who wrote many of the other songs for the INA and the in Fauj. On my mother's head rests a crown. The gardens of India are green, with the flowers of Nehru, Gandhi, Vallabhbhai, Azad, and Ansari in our lips. Subhash will be victorious. On my mother's head rests a crown, a cover of pleasant rain. The country of India becomes green, erasing the pains of our farmers, each house with grain aplenty. The grain aplenty is also thinking about the deprivations they had in Japan. That is also, on my mother's head rests a crown. May there be love between Hindus and Muslims. May our brothers be affable. May the fields of freedom see spring and the rule of happiness reign over India. On my mother's head rests a crown. Thank you.
So,
Wonderful poetry.
thank you. Thank you very much, Sujit. So you've seen what a great impact the book has made on our people here. Three of them very eminent people, and they have brought out different dimensions of the book, and also suggested future work that I think needs to be done. We are really over time, but I think I want to give us some chance for a little bit of discussion. Some of your youngsters who are here, if they wish to ask any question or want to make any comment. So maybe we can take one or two small questions here. Yes, anybody? Okay.
I think basically, I'll not go into the books, but somehow when you are writing, reading about the teenagers in a war, sort of a terrible war, it reminded me of Diary of Anne Frank, actually. It's so melancholy.